There she is. Okay. Hi.
We did it.
Yay. Thank you everyone for being so patient. We have a few of the Work Bigger ladies on.
Hey guys.
So good morning, and thank you everyone for joining first thing today. And Jenna, I know you have to run out at 9:30, so we'll get this going, and I'm going to air this on Facebook Live.
Perfect.
If anyone has any questions, feel free to add it in the chat. So that is just some housekeeping. And we are almost live, but yeah, let's go ahead and get started. So thanks again, everyone, for joining. Everyone who's on right now is familiar with Work Bigger, and you know me, but for anyone who's joining who is not, I'm Belma. I'm the founder of Work Bigger, which is, sorry about that. So Work Bigger is a new online community and mentorship program. And it started as a blog in January 2016. And when I started the blog, I started interviewing women who are mission driven, and they're changing the world by aligning with organizations that are aligned with their mission and making a difference in the world. And they're starting their own companies, or they're really just redefining work for themselves and making work for you, which is incredible. So Jenna is an example of that. She's an entrepreneur and a good friend of mine. She's a social scientist. I'm going to read a very quick bio on her, and then we're going to kick it off. But Jenna is a social scientist who's pursuing her PhD right now in psychology. She's also an entrepreneur, a certified life coach, and a former sales trader, where she spent 8 years in equity derivatives and foreign exchange at JPMorgan. She's one of the only dedicated academics that researches gender diversity in the workplace using evidence-based methodologies. And she's also a published writer for Forbes, Huffington Post, and Thrive Global. Welcome, Jenna. I'm super excited to have you here today. Do you want to kick it off just by introducing yourself and telling us a little bit more about who you are?
Yeah, so thanks everyone. Really happy to be here. So long story short, I was an equity derivatives and then foreign exchange trader for my whole career. I started out in 2008, so it was at the peak of the financial recession. And things were going really well despite tough economic times. And I was very much just like put my head in the ground and just like get my work done and go home and repeat day after day. And that was working out really well for me for about 7 years. And then I became pregnant, and that's when everything really fell apart. Long story short, I was just treated like a very different person. And I like had a world view. I mean, I've had a lot of time to think about this, but long story short, I had a view of the world where as long as I put the work in and people liked me, I would achieve success, right? It was like very much A plus B equals C. And then once I became pregnant, I was still operating under that nice little perfect formula, but it wasn't working anymore. And it became really apparent that just solely because I was having a kid, I was treated differently. I was viewed less committed to the job, less competent. Management who used to see me as a woman worth investing in didn't anymore. And that, so it was very much like a huge failure in my life. And I was fighting against a wall. It's like, well, if I keep working harder, then maybe they'll get it, or maybe I can get past this. But it was just a huge block, and I kept fighting, and it didn't work. So eventually I left the industry altogether, and then went back to school because I'm a super nerd. And I'm finishing up my master's the next few months in mental health counseling, and then I'm starting the doctorate in psychology. And what I do is, so the whole point of the Babies on the Brain, my company, is to make sure no woman goes through what I went through ever again, which is a big goal, but got to dream big.
Yeah. Yeah, and thank you for sharing that. I remember when we met, your story stuck out to me so much as a mom myself. I want to take a step back and just go back to your career in finance a little bit because I know we have many of the readers are in finance, and from what I've heard, the finance industry is not very diverse. So
Yeah.
can you share a little bit about likes and dislikes when things were going well, as well as where were you able to thrive?
Sure. So, it was the whole transition for me was such a massive loss because because I actually loved the job. A lot of people don't like that industry, but I actually loved it. The things that I loved about it were it was super high intense environment. I was given because like everyone was getting laid off and fired in the recession. I was just like dumped a huge amount of responsibility at like 22 and I couldn't get enough. And I have a bit of like an adrenaline junkie in me. I don't really like cliff diving or anything like that, but just in terms of a lot at stake and like, oh my God, I have a chance of doing something of really succeeding here or really fucking up. I was really excited to have that, to be given that opportunity. So I was given like really big accounts at a really young age. I was able to, in terms of like executing, like, I mean, like hundreds of millions of dollars a day of like kind of monopoly money, which sounded ridiculous. That was responsible for risk wise. So that was like super duper exciting. And even though it wasn't diverse, in terms of, two things. One, it wasn't diverse in terms of gender, and it certainly wasn't diverse in terms of race. And those were two things that always really bugged me. And so that's really a focus of my work now, but the lack of diversity and lack of like wanting diversity was a big problem. Mm-hmm. But as far as the job itself, the nuts and bolts, like I actually really, really loved it.
Yeah. And it sounds like when you got pregnant and went through that really difficult period there, one of the things that you lost was that sense of accomplishment and challenge that you really thrived off of.
Totally.
Yeah. Okay. Now I want to transition a little bit to talking about babies on the brain and your work as an entrepreneur. Can you share a little bit about how you made that transition from finance? And it sounds like you didn't have a lot of options, right? And can you tell us a little bit about that transition?
Yeah. So after I left my original bank, like I wasn't exactly sure what I wanted to do, and to think back, like I was very much like just like follow the rules, and as long as I had this straight linear path, like that's how I deemed success. Like that's how I determined success. So I was like, okay, well if JPMorgan's not going to work out, maybe I'll go interview at another bank. So I actually spent like several months interviewing at other places, and I was like, this isn't for me. Like this is not going to work, right? And I had my best friend, she's like, you're wasting your time. Like, you're not doing this anymore. She was like, you have like a dream, like go after your dream, go back to school, figure out how to solve this world's problem and then get busy. So after kind of realizing I was kind of chasing something that wasn't worthwhile to chase, that was when I enrolled in a coaching program, got certified. And through the 8 months that I was in a coaching program, I then started my master's. That was when kind of the idea, Babies on the Brain turned from like an abstract thought into a real business. But I would say, and this is something that I talked about in the interview we did, Belma, like I was really, really insecure during this time because I didn't know what to call myself. Like I was working like an animal trying to like figure this out, but at a cocktail party, and we just moved to the suburbs, so I'm meeting my neighbors and I have like my baby. I'm like up all night with the baby and I'm like, oh God, I gotta work on this website. That people are like, oh, you're home? And I'm like, I don't even know what to tell you. Like, I don't even know what I do.
Yeah. I remember you and I having that conversation. You were like, so am I a coach? I don't know what to call myself. I'm like, I totally get it. I feel like when you're starting something, you don't have all the answers and you kind of just have to keep going, which sounds really cliche because I hear that on a daily basis. You just have to keep going. But eventually that picture of who you are and what it is that you want and eventually what you do starts to show up.
Totally. Yeah. And I feel like I'm still figuring that out. It's just is like there's no markers for success anymore. Like I have to create them.
Yes. Oh, I love that you said that. And you also said when you were making that transition, it sounds like you had a friend who said you have a dream, go out and get it. Mm-hmm. Can you share a little bit about when did you have that epiphany that this linear path isn't the right path and I have to redefine work for myself and pursue that dream? Can you share, like, when did that moment happen for you?
Yeah, I'll never like forget it. So this friend, she was at she was my college roommate, and we've been friends for like, I don't know how long I've been out of school. It's 2007, so long time, whatever, 10 years or whatever. So I had to do the math. And she and I worked together on the same floor at JPMorgan. And when I was pregnant and so devastated over what was happening, she would meet me in the mailroom because I would be sobbing. Like my the mailroom was like my little sob area. So I'd be crying and she would be there for me and she really showed up for me for that time. So she was like a witness to this whole fiasco since the beginning. And then I remember I was interviewing at another big bank and I met her outside the JPMorgan office. I had already obviously quit. And she was like, where have you been? I was like, oh, I was just interviewing at so-and-so. She's like, why? Like, go home and really like think about what you want out of your life. And I was like, oh, okay. And I did. And that's when I decided to stop. And then and then I went back to my husband and I was like, I'm done. I'm not doing this anymore. Mm-hmm. This isn't the industry for me. It's not the industry for our family right now. And it was just like at that moment, I was like, okay, I'm gonna figure it out. I don't know what it looks like, but I'm gonna figure it out or try.
Oh, I have the chills. Yeah, I was. This is a bit random. I was listening to this interview with Barefoot Contessa, and she was just way ahead of her time when she started her business. And she talks about how, she couldn't fit into what was available to her, so she had to create it on her own. So with that, how do you feel now that you're creating something on your own? Can you share a little bit about just what that feels like for you?
I think, so this kind of statement, it's like the high highs and low lows. And I think a lot of entrepreneurs feel that way. Mm-hmm. And so right now, so I feel like I'm in mental health. So I really feel like I'm kind of like a yo-yo. Like I need to be diagnosed. Like I need to go to a psychiatrist because my emotions as if like ebb and flow so dramatically based on like how things are going with my business. Like any small, and this was something that was so important to me. And this is what I tell other entrepreneurs, especially starting out, like you have to celebrate your wins because the loses or like the obstacles are just so, for me, there's just been a lot more of them. And like the wins, and I've told this to my husband because he's like, anytime I get a small win or like maybe a client is like very interested in hiring me, but I don't have the contract, I like celebrate it. And it may not work out, but those like small teeny wins are huge. So I feel like I've gotten a lot better as I go through this journey at getting excited. Even when things just turn from like an idea to a prospect, I don't have to be close the deal yet, but even just the middle phase is worth celebrating. Mm-hmm. And that's how I kind of view the business and kind of view my day to day.
Yeah, because what I'm hearing you say too is that through each small step, there's progress there, and somewhere along those lines, you're growing, and that's absolutely worth celebrating.
Yeah.
One thing that I've been trying to work on, and I shared this with someone in our Work Bigger community yesterday, but I can completely relate to those high highs and low lows. And for me, they were so much worse 2 years ago when when I just started on this path. And I've just, as I've been going through this, I've had this epiphany of you almost have to arm yourself in so many ways against those low lows, because they are very debilitating and they also slow your progress. So
Totally.
one thing that I try to remember is, how can I detach from the outcome and always remember that, like, I'm not my work. Like, my work is so important to me and it's a big part of what I do, but I'm not my work. Like, you're not your work. You're so much bigger than that. There's a lot more to you than that. Just like we attach ourselves to certain labels, whether that's mother or daughter or sister or entrepreneur or woman in finance, right? We attach these labels to ourselves. How can we detach a little bit more so we're not as, I guess, hurt by that outcome, which I think is so hard to do, but it's just something I've been working on. And
yeah, no, I love that. I really struggle with this really bad.
Yeah,
because it's like another baby. I mean, people say that, but like when you're a mission-driven business, and I'm sure you feel this way, and like a lot of the women here, it's like something that you believe, like everything, even when I say it, I can just like feel the weight of it. It's like something you are so passionate about that you've given up a lot of things. It could be financial security. It could be a team. Like you're, especially if you're a solo entrepreneur, like there is a lot of sacrifice. And if people don't see the same vision as you do, which inevitably will happen, it's like, what? It's such a mind blow. It's like, I don't understand.
It's, I went to see An Inconvenient Truth this week with my husband, and watching Al Gore on a mission. So I spent half the movie crying because I was so moved by, not just by his work and everything he was doing, but the way he has just kept at it. And he talked about those low lows as well. Like he's like, there's now a difference between what's right and what's wrong. And I really, like, what keeps me going is that I know that this is right. And watching him just negotiate with other countries and trying to bring them on board, it was incredible, I think, to see when you become mission driven, what roadblocks it allows you to overcome. So but another example of, like, he even has them. Al Gore has the low lows. So.
We're allowed to too.
Yeah. So we have just a few minutes left. I want to throw out one more question and would love to open it up for Q&A. So we have, and I'm going to check the Facebook Live too to see if any questions have come in there. But when we did the interview for the blog, we talked a lot about creativity, and I thought what was interesting, and this is off topic to what we've talked about so far, but you talked about tapping into your most creative moments during certain times of the month. And I think we don't often think about that. So I would love for you to share about your creative process a little bit more.
Yeah. So I'll do a disclaimer. So one, this may sound really crunchy and kind of weird, but just go with me on it. And two, if this is like kind of what I tell a lot of women, if you have PMS, then you probably can, so there's like the negative part of your menstrual cycle, like that PMS really stinks, but you probably have the ability to capitalize on it. Because what PMS is, it's like a abnormal, like it's a response to a fluctuation in hormones. So for those of us that are, and a lot of us really are sensitive in our cycle, like, there's the shitty part of it, but there's also ways you can capitalize on it. So I've like gotten this down to a science because I'm so sensitive. So I like really structure. I laugh every time I say this, structure things based so like precisely on my cycle. So to the point where I can feel once so I get this may be whatever. This is all women. So you get your period, right? So those few days are kind of like neutral, like whatever, not much is happening. I'm not like inspired. I'm not on. I'm not extra social. It's just whatever. Right? Then the week or two leading up to ovulation, and I like see this. I have much more charisma. I am actually more articulate. I can think clearer. That's like a great time for me to schedule pitches. or schedule meetings with people that I really wanted to meet and impress. So it's like, okay,
Awesome.
I know my period's going to end here, and I know that I typically ovulate on day 18-ish, so I'm going to just like slam that week and a half, 2 weeks with meetings.
Yeah. What do you use to track?
Okay, so this is where it gets a little even more crazy. So I've used a bunch of different things. What, for me, I can now tell, like physically tell when I've ovulated, and I actually get it confirmed by a progesterone blood test every month.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Which is kind of crazy. So I go to a lab and I get the blood test, and it's like, all right, I've ovulated. Like I felt like I could feel like the energy kind of go from here to here. And then it's like, now I gotta go in my writing mode and idea creation and like swirl in my basin. And that's when I like can be really moody, but I can capitalize on the moodiness. That's like when I come up with my best article ideas and content. And also do my best therapy work. Because I can just really enter into that place with the client on like a much deeper level because I'm already kind of emotionally there.
Yeah. Yeah. And I just wanted to call that out because I think it's important to highlight and just think about our bodies, our minds, and how all of these, like our whole system plays a role in our creativity when we're most productive. So I just love that example that you shared with the interview we did on the blog. So wanted you to share it again. So I would love to open it up to see if anyone has any questions. And I'm going to check Facebook Live real quick to see if any questions are coming in through there. Nothing through there yet. So, and if there are no questions, I do have one more. I love to end these interviews with just advice that you have, especially for women in finance. What would you say to women who are looking to make that transition, but they have a certain skill set, which is in finance? That's really where the bulk of their network is as well. So it could feel really overwhelming to even think about doing something else. I'm sure they're thinking, where do I even start? So what would you say to them to make that transition or move?
Yeah, that's a hard question. I'll probably elaborate more on it in like the Work Bigger community because I'm going to think about it. But kind of off the top of my head, I would say. So one thing that I saw a lot with women in finance was that they loved certain aspects of their job and hated others. So one is to identify really what aspects you love. For me, not only did I love like the craziness, but I also loved mentoring younger women. Okay. So, and I loved helping them think about their careers. Like that is actually a skill set, and it's not only applicable to finance, right? So what are things that you love already in the industry? And two, what are things that you're really good at in the industry? For someone that's like in sales at a top bank, you can sell anything anywhere. Maybe you do business development for a startup. Like there are different like ways you can capitalize on things that you already do in the industry and apply it elsewhere. It just takes a little bit of thinking outside the box. But I would always suggest figure out what you love about the job and then ask yourself, how can I do this in a different place? And then it just the rest kind of goes from there.
Yeah, that's great advice. And I feel like that's a really good and sort of a low-hanging fruit starting point. Just thinking about where you are right now and when do you feel at your best? And then how can you take that and bring it elsewhere?
Yeah.
Thank you, Jenna. I want to share a cute, since there are no questions, I'm going to send over just where you can find Jenna. Let's see. I just sent it here in the chat, and I'm going to include it on Facebook Live as well. But you can find Jenna at babiesonthebrain.com. She's also a Work Bigger member. She's incredible. So is that okay if the women reach out? Thank you for that. And yeah, if you want to be more mission driven, I think you all have this, but we put together a 3-step process to find your mission. It's a quick workbook that you can work through, so feel free to download that. And then we're hosting another leadership and confidence workshop on 8/2. It didn't show up here in the chat, but I'll include it on Facebook Live. Yeah, that's going to be really awesome. We're having a leadership coach come in, another Work Bigger member. Yeah, and it's called Speak Up, Lead Confidently. So I'm super excited about that. And then finally, we're doing 2 more of these interviews. So let me know if these are helpful to you, if you like them, if we should keep doing more. My goal with these interviews is really to help inspire and educate in a new way. So we're doing 2 more, one next Friday with Joy Liu. But otherwise, yeah, that's it. And thank you, ladies, for joining first thing in the morning. I appreciate it. And thank you for your patience too with the tech stuff.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Jenna. Have a good day.
Bye, ladies. Ciao, ciao.
Bye.